class. Welcome back. Week 2. We are in week 2 of defensive security. This week, like I said, we're going to go through our agenda, and then I'm going to take you through a couple of topics that's in the book, but put my own kind of spin on it. What do you think about that? Like I say, for this week, we're going to look at standards and user education and incident response. So when we some of the activities, you're going to read chapter 4, which is dealing with standards and procedures, user education, incident response, and then there's always the threaded discussion with biblical integration. Then, of course, each week, as you know, you're doing your journal article and you're reviewing that. I hope you had a great week 1. Got a chance to look at the videos that we've got. Like, so once you get your assignments, well, I'll get those graded and get those going. Okay, let's take a look at our lecture for week 2. Standards, user education, incident response. Now, some of this is a rehash from the video I did in week 1, but we're going to go a little bit deeper when we talk about standards and policies and things of that nature. As I said before, when I think about governance and when security governance, it really encapsulates all of these pieces that we're talking about. When we think about strategic vision, tactical implementation, and operational execution, I say this is somewhat a rehash, but you know, replications is what education is all about. So when we think about that strategic vision, 2 to 10 year outlook, as well as tactical implementation, that 1 to 2 year outlook, and then operational execution. Now we're talking days, weeks, months, things that we do on a day-to-day basis. But in this process, this is really now where your standards and where your procedures and policies come into place. What happens many times that we work this bottom up, okay? We work it bottom up instead of top down. Now, doctrine, many times your doctrine unless you are a CISO or a CIO in your organization, you're probably not involved in developing doctrine. That usually comes from much higher levels at the C-suite level, or if you're in the federal sector, then that's coming from the federal government. It could be the DOD if you're working for the Department of Defense, wherever that may be. However, you may get involved in writing policies. Okay, now so we want to take this doctrine that has been developed that gives us an overarching guidance of this is what needs to be done at a very strategic, very high level, looking out 2 to 10 years of how we, we have a strategic vision. Now that's what, and now we start building our internal policies or our business policies based on that. Now policies really, again, starts taking this doctrine and applying it within our organization, still at that strategic level within your organization. And it really starts this policy starts to really tie together the tactical implementation with that strategic vision. How do we take the strategic vision and deploy it tactically within our organization? Policies usually are not very long. The mistake many of us have when we start to develop policy, we want to start adding everything else into it, the standards, the procedures, the checklists, and all that. And so your policy becomes this very bloated document that no one will really read. Your policy should really, you know what, policy is almost like in the Bible, you know, the 10 Commandments. You know, doctrine, high level, is, you know, God's love for us and our love for him. The policy, he gave us, you know, those 10 Commandments, right? And then if you look at when we get into standards, those standards based on the 10 Commandments, now this is how we start to fulfill those. So policy, high level, even within your organization, your policy should be telling you this is what our organization does to meet our organizational goals and our organizational requirements. And that's the policy. The standard tells us this is this is how we do it and this is how it needs to be met. Okay, that we need to, and then when you start bringing standards into the equation, now you start bringing in more things a little more empirical. This is the way we have to develop these our business processes so that we can meet standards. Let's say if you're in the federal government, there may be standards you're going to have to meet because people will come in to audit you and check, hey, this is what you're doing. Or even not just the federal government, banks and everyone else, they have auditors to come in. So the things we have to do have to be based on some type of standard. And now from the standards, now that we can start developing our internal procedures. Procedures are they're the way that we implement so that we meet our standards that's based on policy that's grounded in doctrine, right? So now we have procedures. Now we get to what we work with day to day, checklists and forms and all of those things. Because this now tell me how to implement a procedure. My procedure may be to harden an operating system. Let's say you have Windows 10 running. Well, let's pull this thread all the way from the top. Our doctrine tells us that our at a very high level, our information systems, our information needs to be kept secure. Really, that's what doctrine is going to tell you. We want to ensure that information, critical information is kept secure. Doctrine right at this point doesn't really care about the information system. It's just concerned really about the information. And that's what we should always be concerned about, is the information. Information systems, they come and go, but the quality, the CPI, the critical protected information in your organization, that's what's important. So then our policy says, okay, based on the doctrine, we want to ensure that the information in our organization is kept secure because we need to meet certain criteria for that to happen. Then we break that down to standards. Now we'll take some type of a standard, and that could be a framework, such as a risk management framework. It could be an ISO framework. And this is the standard that we're using to ensure that we're going to keep our information secure by applying some types of security controls, okay? And these security controls are the standards that we work toward to ensure that we meet the policy of keeping our internal organizational information secure based on doctrine at much higher levels. So now we have these standards, and like I say, these standards, if you're in the finance industry, you could be working with COBIT or PCI DSS or any of these other types of standards. There's many standards out there. You can develop your own standard of what of how you want to maintain your information system. Now we start getting to the information system levels, and that, well, to ensure that our policy, that we can implement the policy of securing our data. Now we say that, okay, our information systems have to be managed and maintained a certain way, such as we want to be sure that our operating systems, whether it's Windows or whether it's Red Hat, Linux, or whatever you may be running, Solaris, hopefully you're not still running Solaris out there, but you might be. Now, what are the standards that we need these information systems to operate at? So now we're going to apply some type of technical implementation guide to say that when you install Windows, that, you know, the screensaver have to come on after 15 minutes of not being used. If you don't touch your mouse or keyboard, that's a standard that within your organization, you want to meet that standard to do that. Or there could be many other standards that your systems will be audited once a week, whatever. But those are the standards based on security controls. Now, to implement these standards, we have procedures, and those procedures can be many things, like I say, like a security technical implementation guide. If you're around the federal government, DOD, you hear these things called STIGs, is that we STIG our machines. Basically, we apply a procedure. We run a procedure in order for this operating system, like Windows, to have the screensaver to come on or go into a session lock. If you don't touch the mouse or keyboard, then here's the procedure. You go in and you do a GPO, a group policy object setting. Okay, that now we're going to set this time to 15 minutes. Passwords, same thing. Probably even a better example. You know, that we want to maintain access control. Our policy says that ensure that before anyone can get to this information, that they have to have a user account with a user password or some type of way of authenticating. The standards say, okay, in our organization, we're going to use passwords, and the password length has to be, you know, anywhere from 16 to 32 characters, and you have to have a special character, you have to have a number, all of those things. That's the standard. Now, the procedure is that now our system administrator goes in and sets up a password policy based on, they don't make it up themselves, has to be rooted and grounded in policy that already exists. Now we go in and set up the password policy within our GPO that says before you can log in, you have to meet these requirements of your password. And the password had to be changed every 60 days. And if you don't use your account in 90 days, and it's going to be disabled. All of these things are based in standards. Now, how they implementate that is the procedures is through different types of checklists and different types of forms. I mean, you may come into an organization and here's our in-processing policy that here filled out the form, or you may have a website they go to, a ticketing system. It could be Jira or some type of ticketing system that says now if you want to have access to your company information that's sitting on an information system, here is the process, procedures, and the forms required to do that. So you see now how top to bottom, everything has to be started here with some type of high-level doctrine based in policy. But I will tell you guys, just from my experience, we usually flip this around. We have system administrators, we've got security guys doing things down here because, and it's completely delinked from what the policy is. So then we wonder why there's so much confusion and in our organizations, because many times we're doing things because it sounded like a good idea. Hey, let's create a form so we can do this, and this. And we're creating procedures, right? But those procedures many times are not linked to standards that are linked to policy that's linked to doctrine. And then we get audited, inspectors come in, and we fail miserably because we have made up our own tactical or operational implementation procedures. So when we think about this thing with security governance, I know sometimes it sounds boring. Like, why do I have to learn all this? Because this is why. Because when anything that we're doing here at the bottom, there should be a path all the way up to the top. And if you can't pull that string of the why from here to here, you should question, why are we doing it? What value does this particular task bring to our organization? If it's not based in the procedures, we're not doing it based on an authorized procedure, based on a standard, based on approved policy that's tied to higher level doctrine. Now, when we think about this, we now have to look at how we train so that individuals in our organization understand this. And when we do that, it gives everybody a better sense of accomplishment, of understanding that what we're doing, whether we're working in security or not, is linked to our organizational processes. And this is where education and training comes in, okay? So when you think about education and training, two different things. Many times we throw them in the same bucket, but they're not. There's a fundamental difference between security education, security training, or any education and training. Okay, let's think about this. You all are in California Baptist University. That's an accredited school of higher learning. Why? Because you want to get an education. You want to gain knowledge here, right? Now, you could have done like your cousin or your brother or sister, and you could have gone to a trade school and learned how to be a welder, right? To get training to perform a task. Fundamental difference between education, knowledge-based, training, task-based. Now, as you see how I kind of laid this out, these things that we're doing here at the top, they really map to education. This the knowledge here at this level. As you go to the bottom, there's some task-based training, but you see it really starts to fizzle out here. But as you come down here in this tactical implementation, especially when you get into this operational execution, now this is when we're talking about task level training. So understanding the differences between those two is very important, especially as we segue to our next topic of building a training and security training, security education program within your organization, within your structure. Understanding education, knowledge-based training, task-based. So when we think about building a security training program, was that a good segue or not? Yes, it was. Then we can start asking the questions. Why do we train? What are the roles and responsibility in our organization as we train? What type of organizational policy? So you see how this stuff all links together. Training isn't sitting over here, out in the wild doing their own thing. Understand, okay, what are the rules of behavior when you're operating as a user on the network? What rules of behavior should you be putting in place? And I always recommend, if you can, to have some type of test their knowledge, because when you think training and security and education training, you have awareness training. What is awareness training? That's just when, boom, here's some information. Thank you very much, and you walk away. You can have, which is knowledge-based training. With knowledge-based training, this is what we're doing in class right now, where I give you some information, some facts, you process those facts, kind of regurgitate them back to me. And so I can measure your level of knowledge and understanding, we have some type of quiz, some type of test, some way of testing that knowledge. So if you're in an organization and you have to build security training, look at how are you testing their knowledge, some type of quiz. It doesn't have to be in depth, it doesn't have to be 100 question quiz, but as you're training, ask the question, okay, let's go back and review what we did. So I always try to build that into my training infrastructure. And one of the things right up front you want to do is the why. Remember I said last week, people who know why will always tell people who know how what to do. So why do we train? Fundamental question. Why? Why do we train? And from a security perspective, it's always about one word: risk. Our goal is to mitigate risk and protect critical information. That is why we train. Okay? So, and always start with that risk formula. What risk is? What the likelihood of a threat exploiting a vulnerability and the corresponding business impacts. Okay, let's all say this together. I can virtually hear every student out there in unison going, risk is the likelihood of a threat exploiting a vulnerability and the corresponding business impact. Yes. So you say, why is that important? How can we how do we work this into our training? Well, you start talking about threats based within your organization. So if you look at your organization, you will have some types of threat. It could be malicious threats, meaning they're like insiders. There are people out there trying to get access to your company's critical protected information. You got negligent threats. What are those? Those are just careless threats where just from someone's negligence, that they just didn't do something. Okay. Accidental threats. They weren't negligent, but just made a mistake. Either because of lack of training, lack of, they may have gotten education, but they didn't get task level training that they needed to perform some type of task. And this is very big when it comes to things like insider threat, phishing attacks, all of these things that, hey, the reason that I clicked on that link because I just didn't realize it. I mean, I was busy, I was fast. Everybody in business now, everybody's moving at the speed of what they call speed of business. So, I saw the email, read it, didn't read it well enough, didn't stop and think about what I was reading, clicked on the link, and wow, now I've opened up some type of threat vector. So malicious threats, negligent threats, accidental threats, and you tailor those to within your organization. Well, just because we have threats alone isn't enough to always, have an incident. That's why, sorry about that. We need to understand the vulnerabilities within your organization. Vulnerabilities, like I said, that could be untrained workforce. That's a vulnerability. You can have policies that are written very vague, procedures vague, to where even though the workforce may be trained, but they're trained on policies and processes and procedures that are not clear and easily understandable. And again, you can have unsecure information systems that aren't properly patched. We don't have AV running and these things. Now, I will tell you, this is where the balance comes in because, again, I think we covered it last week briefly. Everyone wants to go to the technical task. Hey, let's patch. Let's be sure we got antivirus. Let's be sure our systems are hardened. We've got all these things in place. And guess what? We are secure. Yes, our scans are here. Scores are sitting at 95%. I've just pushed all the patches and we get this false sense of security. False sense that we are secure. No different in your home, okay? Let's say that you want to secure your home. You go to Home Depot, you buy the best door locks, the best deadbolt locks made out of titanium steel, military grade. You put 3 of those locks on every one of your doors, right? Same thing with your windows. You put locks on all the windows, and you got security cameras pointing on every corner of your house. And you go to bed that night, baby, tell your wife, baby, we are secure. But what you didn't realize or didn't think about, you gave the key to all of those locks to your 10-year-old son. So now your son, because it could be he's untrained, not realizing the threats out there that someone social engineering, hey, young guy, how's it going? Make friends with him. And what do? Hey, I hear you got video games. Wow, you got the latest, World of Warcraft or whatever it may be. I'm not a gamer. And now he socially engineers your son, and your son opens all of those titanium locks and let them in. So how secure really is your home? Not very, because even though you got technical controls in place, your administrative process is something simply as training, telling your son, please do not ever bring anybody home when we are not here. Okay? Vague policies, meaning that you may have told them that, but you didn't really explain it well. Well, I thought it was okay if my cousin came over because, no. When we say everybody, we mean everybody, okay? Or if you're from St. Louis, and then how do you say it? Everybody. But I think most of you guys are from California, so you don't have that Midwestern accent. You say everyone. Yeah. So even though we have technical controls in place, there are still a litany of vulnerabilities that are out there that can bypass any technical control that you have in place. So that's why training, policies, administrative controls are so very important. And when threats and vulnerabilities get together, that's where we can have business impact. Because now our risk or our likelihood of an exploitation has increased. So now the likelihood of a threat agent exploiting a vulnerability have increased. Impact. So when we think about impact can happen 2 ways. It can be profit loss to your company. That's one huge area. But it can also be loss of credibility, loss of business. Could be life and death, depending on what your product is. Again, if you're working with a defense contractor that's providing a weapon system to the United States military, and then you have some type of threat, some type of exploit, that could be life and death, of young men and women on the battlefield, or the margin of error between winning and losing. So these things are very important, not just the technical, but also the non-technical. So when you're building your training with all those things in the back of your mind, well, here's just some training topics to consider as you're building a training program. Account management program. This is huge, guys. This is so big. So many of our exploits over the years have happened because of poor account management processes and procedures. Okay. Like I said, I can't think of the individual's name I'm trying to think of right now who did an exploit and he elevated his privileges. He was really big in the news a few years back. And the name Snowden. Yes. In case you don't know, my lovely wife is sitting right here listening to this, and she whispers over, Snowden. Thank you, babe. Yes, Eric Snowden. The reason that he was able to do what he was able to do was because of lack of good account management processes. Training, individual training, how to protect authenticators, account activities, things like lockouts, passwords. But really, it was more about the privileged user accounts with this individual. Many times in our organizations, we're very good at giving accounts. Okay, yeah, we got great policies, processes, and procedures. Someone new comes in, a new hire, and they want to get, they get indoctrinated into your organization, and you get them a new user account. Great. But what happens when that individual leaves? And do we have those processes in place to be able to shut that account off when that person leaves, especially if they move within the organization? That's where Eric Snowden was able to do. As he moved from one department within the organization, sometimes that is where we really lose focus on account management. When someone leaves an organization, many times, most of the times, their account shut down, disabled, but internal tracking that now this person has moved. They're no longer in finance. They've moved to accounting. Okay, so now, do they still need the same rights, privileges, and accesses that they did when they were in accounting, but now we're in finance, but now they're sitting in accounting. Account management. Another topic you want to think about is media protection. This is huge, guys, especially if you have organizations, you have to move media, whether it's DVDs, CDs, different types of thumb drives, all of these things that have to move from one place to another. How do you protect the media within your organization? Who has the ability, to read and to write onto media within your organization? Does everyone, can everyone open up a CD, drop a DVD in, or be able to plug a USB in port into your network? Training them on those things. What type of hardware restrictions? Like I say, you may work for the government. Do you have warning banners that you're going to put up? Like if you're in the DOD, there's a DOD warning banner. Do you have classified systems? All of these things that you want to be able to train people on: hardware, software usage restrictions. Don't make changes to our network, please. Please put in a trouble ticket and let our IT department do that. Also, it's good to refresh on physical security training, entry and exit, tailgating, things of those natures. Because here again, these things are very important, even though they're not high-tech controls sometimes, but this is how individuals are able to enter and exit spaces where they may not have a need to, like your data center, your server rooms. Who has access to that? And here again, tailgating is huge because in America especially, we are pretty nice people. We like doing the right thing. And if you see someone behind you in a brown uniform with brown pants, brown shirt with a dolly and 5 boxes stacked on it, and you're going in the front door this morning and you see they're kind of struggling with those boxes, because they look like they work for UPS. And you look at them, oh, good morning, how are you doing? Oh, let me help you with that. And you hold the door open and you help them bring these boxes that looks pretty important into your facility. Have not checked ID, have not done authentication to ensure that is actually a UPS employee. But you allow him to tailgate right in because here again, we're just nice and we want to do the right thing. So think about those things. Always, and those are things that we want to train our workforce, as you're building a training program. This is a big one. Restricted use items. Personal electronic devices, medical devices, because depending on where you work, do we want everyone to be able to come in and just plug in and bring any type of personal electronics into our organization? Probably not. And what type of policies in place, especially with, BYOD, when you have, bring your own device. There should be good policies, processes, standards in place of how to manage devices, your own devices, and especially now with people working from home and remoting in and able to do that from their home device. What type of protections are in place? Those types of things also needs to be covered. Incident response, data spills, and how to recognize and report incidents. And when we think about incident response, let's go a little deeper in that area when we think incident response. When we talk about incident responses, many things can trigger an incident, okay? It could be, like I said, data spill. Data spill meaning that I've got a data or information that have been introduced to a network or a system that is not cleared to process that. If you're working in an organization with, different types of secure information, you may have a secret data that could be spilled onto an unclassified machine. So now you have a data spill, knowing that now we need to have processes in place to do that. Inadvertent disclosure or malware, meaning that now you could have your antivirus, whether it's Symantec or ClamAV, whatever you may be running, it pops. What do you do? Okay, we have an incident now. How do we handle that? Some of the things to consider when we talk about incident response or incident handling procedures. Four basic things. There's more. Four basic things. One, first thing we'll do, preserve the scene. So often, right? We have an incident, and the first thing people want to do is turn the computer off, or move stuff around. No. Preserve the scene. When you get there, if you're part of an incident response team, then yeah, you need to know how to preserve the scene. No different with digital incident response. No different than physical incident response. If you look at police departments, when they show up to a crime scene, they want to be sure when you get there, okay, don't touch anything. Because right now, everything is evidence because we may not know what's going on. You have to have the same mindset in the digital environment. So whoa, don't remove that CV. Don't disconnect anything just yet. We want to preserve the scene because we don't know what's going on. But that also has to be based in your organization's policies. Then preserve the data. This is a big one. Preserve the data. For years, people would show up. I think I got a virus. Let me turn off my computer. Wrong. Because what happens when you turn off that computer, right? What happens? Everything that's in RAM, all of your non-volatile memory has just been washed away. Whatever's in your registers, whatever's in RAM, whatever, it could be page files on your hard drive that could have very important forensics information on there, but boom, all gone. So now some valuable data has been destroyed. Now, probably one of the biggest from a legal perspective is this: chain of custody. Nothing will get a case thrown out of court quicker than a break in chain of custody. So when you've done a great job of preserving the scene, you've done a great job of preserving the data, but you don't do the bag and tag properly, meaning that when you take that hard drive, that information, whatever it may be, now the dates and times have to match. If there's a break in chain of custody, any defense lawyer worth their weight will get that case thrown out. So know how to maintain chain of custody from the time that evidence has been collected to the time that it is taken to court, and even during the trials in courts, how to manage that. And then the reporting requirements. All of these things, this whole process really does require a very, very good documented policies, processes, procedures, and they have to be repeatable. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So now who has to be notified? My direct boss. In some cases, you may have to notify public affairs or physical security, other people within your organization who people that you work with horizontally, people that you work with vertically up the chain, knowing who to report to. Preserve the scene, preserve the data, chain of custody, reporting procedures. So now we'll take a look at what we call the incident response lifecycle. Incident response, four major steps. Preparation, detection and analysis, containment, eradication, recovery, and post-incident activity. So let's look at each one of those. So like I say, in the preparation stage, this is where you want to ensure that everyone in your organization know who to contact on the incident response team. So in case there's an incident, any type, it could be a forensic type of incident or digital incident. It could be a physical incident. It could be, an access incident. Somebody brings in a PED, a personal electronics into an area where it's not authorized. Yes, that's an incident. So they need to know quickly, who do we contact? That's part of your training program that you train to your organization. Next, detection and analysis. Know how to recognize common attack vectors. And that could be email vectors, social engineering, brute force type of attacks. So once you know how to detect that and then how to analyze that, so that we can start pulling email records, looking at Exchange servers and whatever it may be, or social media. 'Cause, you may have SharePoint or, like I say, Jira, some other social media tool that you're using in your organization. How do you do that? How do you extract it? Now, and that's getting to be more and more, I won't say a challenge, but something to be aware of as we're becoming more cloud enabled. Because if you're running Office 365 on a cloud instantiation, now, do you actually have access to those files yourself, or do you have to now go through a third-party cloud provider? And then you need to understand what is written in the ISA, in your support agreements with that cloud provider, of what they will provide you in the event of some type of attack. Now, once you've got that, then we can move into the contain, eradicate, and recovery phase. This is about good decision making. Goes back to, at this point, do I shut the system down? Do you disconnect the system from the internet, from the network? All of these things. In this phase, very, very important phase. Really, here is where a lot of this happens. And then last part of that is the post-incident activities. This is your after-action report. Hot watches. This is where after the incident, all right, guys, let's bring it together. Let's walk through this. Let's document what we did good, what we did bad, where we can make improvements in our incident response program. So that way, our turnaround time for the next incident will be much better. And you always want to maintain records, good record keeping of these incidents, and the post-incident reviews. Because in doing that have basically built your incident response training program for new people coming into your organization. Now I can pull an incident that we actually happened, and now let's run that. Let's do a tabletop and walk other people through that. So incident response, a lot of moving pieces, very important to your organization. Most people don't think about it until when? After an incident has happened, and we're all looking at each other. Oh my God, what do we do? Well, who do we call? I don't know. And it should never be that way. You should exercise your incident response program, so when something happens, it is just step 1, step 2, step 3. Call, gather, do this, and it's just muscle memory. All right, guys. So we covered quite a few things this week. Actually, governance and policies, how to develop user education and training, as well as incident response. Hope you have a great week 2. Again, any questions, anything with any of the activities, please reach out. Like I say, this is there's a lot of information in this class, I think, as you're probably starting to see, and but it's really good because this really starts to help you understand, not just the academic side of security cyber, but hopefully some of the things that we do day to day to maintain a defensive cybersecurity posture. Have a great week. God bless, and we will see you in week 3.